The truth is darker than you've ever imagined. A woman can betray everything her values, her family, even her children if she believes the man before her is powerful enough to own her chaos. This isn't fiction. It's not a romantic exaggeration. It's biology. It's history. In ancient times, when tribes were conquered, the women didn't scream or flee into the woods. They stayed. They adapted. They aligned with their captors, not because of affection, but out of instinct, because survival by nature is indifferent to sentiment.
Oh.
These women married their enemies, bore their children, and continued the bloodline of those who defeated them. Not from loyalty, but from necessity. Because when the dust settles after the war, survival doesn't ask how you feel, demands that you continue. The feminine instinct, at its core, isn't tied to morals or vows. It's tied to power. And power, when it walks into a room, doesn't have to ask for attention. A woman may call you toxic, may accuse you of being dangerous, but if you radiate dominance, if your silence carries more weight than her chaos, she will eventually submit. Not out of love, not out of logic, but from something deeper, something older than language, something she can't explain, but you must understand. Freud never set out to degrade women. He was trying to decode them. Believed that behind every emotion, behind every seductive glance, behind every choice a woman makes, there lies a silent war. A war between what she wants and what she's been taught to want. That internal conflict, invisible yet relentless, guides her in ways she doesn't fully grasp. Why is she drawn to danger? Why does safety feel suffocating? Why does she reject the man who offers peace and run back to the one who threatens her? Sanity? Freud didn't call this confusion. He saw it as structure. At her primal core, her idea, she craves three things: power, protection, and pleasure. Morality. It doesn't enter the conversation. Your kindness, your compassion, your well-meaning words, none of it matters if she senses that you can't tame the storm inside her. Her superego, shaped by culture, by upbringing, by scarstize, to shame this desire, labeling it as wrong, wild, dangerous. And caught in the middle is her ego, fighting to survive the pull of both forces. That's why. She's unpredictable. That's why she burns hot, then cold. That's why she wants you on, then wounds you on. It's not instability. It's a strategy. A deep, unconscious rhythm that holds your focus like a flame. Because to her, love is not peace. Love is power. If you don't understand this, you'll misread every signal. You'll think her tests are signs of affection. You'll mistake her silence for mystery. You'll assume her confusion is innocence. And you'll miss the one truth she'll never say aloud. She doesn't want to feel safe. She wants to feel claimed. Sigmund Freud didn't begin as a rebel. He started as a doctor curious, clinical, trying to understand why people suffered. But the further he ventured into the human mind, the more unsettling the answers became, especially when it came to women. He didn't trust appearances, not smiles, not manners, not even emotion. What fascinated Freud was the unconscious, though. Part of the mind that doesn't follow reason, that moves in shadows, that desires without asking permission. And when he turned his attention to female desire, not the kind women speak of, but the kind they're drawn to in silence, he unearthed something that shattered the illusion of softness. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't safe. It was raw. It was primitive. It was driven by survival and submission to power. Freud watched women abandon gentle men and obsess over those who triggered their shame, fear, or longing. Again and again. He observed this pattern: women who said one thing but did another. They claimed to want kindness, peace, safety. They were drawn to men who activated something buried deep inside them, something uncomfortable, something raw. Freud saw that their words didn't match their instincts, and their guilt didn't stop the cycle. He called it repression, a powerful psychological defense. It's the mind's way of hiding what it cannot bear to face. Women weren't lying. They were repressing their own truths. And society. Society was their accomplice. rewarding the mask and punishing the revelation. And when Freud tried to pull that mask away to speak the unspeakable, the world recoiled. He wasn't just criticized, he was ridiculed, silenced, even hated. Not because he was mistaken, but because he was too right, because the truth terrified people. Because no one, not even the woman herself, wants to admit what truly drives her. You think she's ignoring you? That her silence means she's moved on, that she's uninterested? But Freud would argue this silence is not about you at all. It's not rejection, it's resistance. Her unconscious mind, threatened by what you represent, activates its own emergency system. Silence becomes her shield. It's not absence, it's architecture, reflex, a response built to guard against the chaos inside her. When the ID stirs that ancient primal hunger for connection, it frightens the rest of her psyche. Because deep inside, the little girl she once was still breathes.
That girl remembers what it felt like to reach for love and find only distance.
Maybe she sobbed quietly in a room and no one came. Maybe her father's presence was physical, but his heart was vacant. And though time passed, that experience didn't vanish, it fossilized in her unconscious. So now as an adult, that old pain wears a new disguise. It dresses itself as independence, detachment, control. It whispers. From the shadows, leave before you care too much. Disappear before he gets close enough to hurt you. So when you text her and she doesn't respond, yet still watches your stories, still lingers on your page, know this: you didn't lose her interest. You triggered her wounds. Wounds so old, even she doesn't have the words for them. This is repression in action. Her unconscious mind buries her yearning for you because the super-rigorous voice of rules, of warnings, of survival, tells her closeness is danger. Her ego, the negotiator caught in the middle, begs her to stay distant. Don't reply. Don't feel. Stay in control. She doesn't vanish to punish you. She vanishes to protect herself, to preserve the fragile system that has kept her safe. Because at that moment, you're not just a man, you're a mirror. You reflect her entire history, her old fears, her childhood tears, her silent promises to never need anyone again. And here lies the paradox, the tragedy. Freud hinted at, but the world still resists. The more real, open, and loving you are, the more dangerous you feel to her unconscious. Because your warmth feels foreign. Her nervous system was wired in the cold. You offer presence, but she was shaped by absence. So don't take her distance personally. Don't chase it or resent it. Understand it.
Oh.
Her silence isn't proof that she doesn't care. It's proof she's still at war with herself. And remember this: when a woman runs without reason, it's not always fear of you. It's fear of what you awaken. She looks at you like she wants you. Her smile lingers longer than necessary. Her posture softens. Her body leans in. And just when you reach for her, she pulls away. She hints, she flirts, then she vanishes, left. In limbo, confused, suspended between invitation and rejection. This isn't immaturity. It's psychological warfare. And Freud saw it long before Tinder ever existed. Long before dating apps, filtered photos, and instant gratification reshaped intimacy. Freud had already uncovered the root of something far older and far more complex. He called it the internal war between two primal forces, the ID and the superego. The ID doesn't care about society, tradition, or the rules of polite behavior. It craves the thrill, the connection, the heat of intimacy, the pull of dominance and surrender. It's raw and untamed. It wants now, but the superego stands as its silent judge. It whispers in her ear, casting shadows of shame and guilt. Be a good girl. Don't give in. Don't want too much. And so, the mind splits in two. This fracture, subtle but profound, becomes the root of sexual manipulation. Not always done with awareness, but always done with purpose, strategic, even when unconscious. Because as a child, she learned early that attention equals survival. If she could be desirable, she could be safe. But full surrender? That was dangerous. That was punished. Vulnerability led to rejection. Now as a woman she flirts without even realizing it. The way she adjusts her shirt, the slow blink, the graze of fingertips on a glass, all of it pulls you in, activating your most primal chase reflex. She wants to be wanted but not possessed. She wants to be seen but not fully claimed. Freud named this phenomenon reaction formation, a psychological defense where someone expresses the exact opposite of what they truly feel, just to protect themselves. She might long for closeness, but acts detached. She may feel a deep sexual desire, but speaks only of purity and boundaries, because to admit the truth would shatter her. Illusion of control, and control is her last protection. You think she's being hot and cold? That she's playing games. But in reality, she's torn between hunger and fear, two instincts pulling her in opposite directions. Her ego is stuck in the middle, frantically trying to hold it all together. It tells her, flirt but don't. Fall. Stay desirable, but stay distant. Lead the dance, but never lose control. So when you lean in too much, when your interest becomes too real, too honest, her unconscious doesn't whisper, it screams, run. And here's the truth most men don't want to hear. You can't win this game by playing along. If you chase her body, she may reward you in the moment, but she will crucify your soul in the aftermath. But if you stop reacting, if you truly understand the script, you recognize the performance for what it is, you'll become untouchable. Because while a woman can manipulate a man who wants her, she cannot control the man who knows himself. And that terrifies her more than love ever could. You think she's rare? You think she's different? That she's special because she doesn't need anyone? But what you're feeling may not be true attraction. Scarcity. Freud would tell you this isn't about her. It's about what she represents in the depths of your unconscious mind. She's become the symbol of something you never received. The missing piece of love, of comfort, of belonging. So when a woman pulls away, goes cold, grows distant, and emotionally detached, your ID panics. It begs, don't lose this. Do something. Prove you're worthy. Show her you matter. But that reflex isn't born from love. It's born from lack. Maybe as a boy you had a mother whose affection came in waves, warm one moment, cold the next. Maybe love felt conditional. Maybe silence was a punishment. And so your nervous system learned early. Love isn't given. It must be earned. Now when a woman reflects that same emotional unavailability, your unconscious doesn't resist it, recognizes it. It says, this is familiar. This is home. And so you fall not for her, but for the wound she reopens. She doesn't need to say a word. Her silence is enough. It becomes a mirror, reflecting every moment you felt unseen, unheard, invisible. And suddenly, you don't just want her attention, you want to heal. But here's the poison, the cruel twist, psychological trap. The more scarce she becomes, the more valuable she feels. Not because she's inherently rare, but because your brain, trained by early emotional deprivation, equates absence with worth. Her silence isn't emptiness. It's a signal your nervous system interprets as significance. It's not logic. It's biology. This is what Freud identified as displacement, the act of redirecting emotions from their original source to a substitute. You think you're chasing her, but you're not. You're chasing an echo, the emotional ghost of your past. That quiet ache, the sense of not being enough, the hunger to be seen. It didn't begin with her, and yet here you are hooked, not to the woman in front of you, but to the feeling she triggers, that familiar need to prove your value, and she knows. Even if not consciously, she senses the dynamic. The moment she withdraws affection, even subtly, your masculinity begins to tremble. Your self-worth, once your zits, outsourced to her reactions. Her attention becomes your lifeline, and when she pulls away, the panic sets in. But here's the harsh truth. No woman, no matter how beautiful, magnetic, or mysterious, should have the power to destabilize your nervous system. If she does, it's not love. It's a trauma loop. Till you stop confusing emotional starvation with intimacy, you'll keep crawling back to women who feed you crumbs and convince you it's a feast. You'll think you're rising when you're only reacting. You don't rise by earning her validation. You rise the moment you recognize the script and refuse to act in it. Because true power begins when you stop chasing your childhood through the bodies of modern women. She tells you she's ready. She looks you in the eye and says, "You're the one." Talks about babies, building a life, marriage. What a moment. Just a moment you feel chosen, safe, seen. But then, like glass slipping through your fingers, the dream collapses. Something shifts. She pulls back, or worse. She turns on you, blaming you for the very promises she once made with conviction. What just happened? Freud called it projection, the unconscious act of displacing unresolved inner conflict onto someone else. She wasn't lying to you. She was lying to herself. And you became the screen her internal drama was projected onto. At the start, it was real. Her eye, that instinctual part of her mind, was awakened. It craved connection, safety, belonging. She envisioned a future and let herself believe it could happen. But as that fantasy drew closer to becoming reality, another voice grew louder. The superego, the internal critic built by culture, family, past wounds, began to whisper, "You're not ready. This is too much. It'll hurt you. You can't trust this." That inner war birthed dissonance. And rather than confront it, she transferred it onto you. Suddenly, you became the unstable one. You were the reason it wouldn't work. You were the excuse her unconscious needed to destroy what her heart secretly wanted. And this pattern? It's not new. As children, when our emotions were too overwhelming, we created stories to protect ourselves. Narratives that made the chaos feel manageable. Women who experienced emotional neglect, pressure, or inconsistency growing up often develop a deep, unconscious fear of commitment. Not because they don't want love, because they associate love with vulnerability, and vulnerability with pain. So they chase the illusion of commitment, the fantasy, the safety of being desired. But when reality begins to demand true emotional exposure, they panic, they sabotage, they crumble under the weight of their own longing. They borrow your stability to build a dream they've never truly felt safe inside. And the moment that dream feels too real, they shatter it, telling themselves, "You were never the one," when in truth, they were never certain of who they were to begin with. And here's where most men collapse. It's not because they're weak, because they've been trained to believe that love means fixing, that silence means failure, that her inner pain must somehow be their responsibility. So they internalize the guilt. They carry shame that doesn't belong to them. They twist themselves into emotional shapes, trying to fix what was never theirs to fix. They beg to prove their worth inside someone else's inner war that began long before they ever entered the story. But here's the brutal truth. You cannot win a battle that lives inside or unconscious. You cannot rescue someone from the lies they need in order to feel safe. You cannot drag someone into the light who still finds comfort in the dark. And the wise man knows this. He doesn't argue with her sudden emotional switch. He doesn't plead when the narrative turns against him. He recognizes the script, the same predictable script hand, exits the theater without applause, because a woman who projects her inner chaos onto you is not building a partnership. She's building a shield. And you become the material that shield is made from. Her defense mechanism, her excuse, her emotional crash pad. She mocks you. She dismisses your masculinity. She paints you as cold, arrogant, maybe even controlling. She says, "I could never be with a man like you." And yet she doesn't truly leave. She keeps orbiting, watching, circling back, liking a story, sending a half-hearted message, ghosting, then reappearing. This isn't confusion. This is Freud's reaction formation, and someone expresses the opposite of what they truly feel because the truth feels too risky to admit. What she's masking is desire. What she's hiding is the pull. What she's terrified to face is submission, not weakness, but the surrender of control to a force she secretly longs to trust. What she disguises as contempt is really a deep, suffocating ache for masculine energy that holds firm in the storm. Her words might sound like rejection, but her body, her presence, her instinct betray her. Because biology doesn't lie. She critiques the very traits her ID craves: strength, groundedness, mystery, power. Why? Because she was never taught to embrace what she desires, only to fear it. Maybe she grew up beneath the shadow of a weak, absent father. Or worse, under the dominance of one who overpowered instead of protected. Maybe she learned slowly and painfully that wanting a powerful man made her less than, made her submissive, made her vulnerable. So her superego, the internal voice of social rules, judgment, fear, feminism, trauma, fires back with defenses. He's toxic. He's a narcissist. He's unsafe. Not because it's true, but because it's safer to shame her desire than to surrender to it. So she lashes out. She attacks you with words, hoping those words will kill the part of herself that aches to be claimed. Held, dominated in the deepest emotional sense. And every time you hold your frame, every time you don't flinch or justify or beg, every time you stay still amid her chaos, she hates you more. But that hatred is laced with arousal. It's charged. Because your refusal to collapse is the very masculine gravity her storm longs to orbit. Your stillness activates what her ego denies. But this is the trap that most men fall into. They start defending themselves. They explain, they rationalize, they apologize. They try to correct the image she projects, not realizing that the moment they do, they've surrendered to it. But the man who understands projection never takes the insult at face value. He hears beneath the words. He listens for what the unconscious is really screaming. Your presence makes me feel things I was trained to suppress. Your masculinity wakes up parts of me I was told to silence. And the only true response to that isn't words. It's not argument. It's not validation. It's stillness, silence, power. Because when a woman fights you for the control she secretly hopes you'll take, you don't negotiate, you don't chase, you don't retreat, you hold. You let her chaos rage against your calm, and in that holding, in that silent strength, her mask begins to crack. Her performance starts to crumble. You begin to see what was always hidden beneath the noise. You thought you wanted Hertha, woman with the beauty, the spark, the drama. But if you strip that away, the curves, the lashes, the chaos, what's left? A pattern, a wound, a reenactment. And just as Freud warned, the unconscious mind repeats what it never resolved. That we seek out the same pain not because we enjoy suffering, but because suffering feels like home. That's the cruel comfort of the familiar. It's not pleasure that draws you back. It's recognition. That ache in your chest when she pulls away, the tightness in your gut when she goes silent, those are echoes. Shadows of wounds that were never healed. And that's the illusion. You weren't really chasing a woman. You were chasing a feeling, a memory, a ghost of your unmet needs. The woman who ignores you, who pulls you close then vanishes, who gives affection only to withdraw it again. She's not unique. She's a reflection. She mirrors your mother's absence or your father's emotional coldness. She feels powerful not because she is, but because she awakens the boy inside you. The one still whispering, if I can just get her to love me, maybe I'll finally be enough. But that was never her job. She was never the healer. And the deeper betrayal, it isn't hers. It's yours. You betrayed yourself the moment you handed her the key to your self-worth. The moment you decided that her affection would be your redemption. And worst of all, you believed that if you just suffered the right way, if you played the role, stayed loyal, stayed patient, you'd be chosen. That eventually she'd see your worth and give you what you never received. But you weren't in love. You were hypnotized by scarcity, by longing, by a subconscious craving to complete a story that began in your childhood. You weren't trying to win her. You were trying to repair the boy. And that's why it keeps breaking you. Because no woman, no matter how loving, how nurturing, how magical, can mother the man who refuses to father himself. The illusion was never her attention. It was the belief that your value depended on it. You don't fight this game by reacting to every emotional test. You end the game by leaving the arena. The woman who tests, withholds, seduces, then disappears. She's not your opponent. She's your mirror. And your only task is to stop flinching when you see your reflection. Freud taught that real power doesn't come from repression, from silencing your instincts, but from sublimation, the transformation of raw chaos into purposeful creation. Take the hunger, the need, the I can't, channel it, not toward her, but toward yourself. So when you feel the urge to chase, pause, breathe, hold that fire, name it at your becoming, because the man she cannot manipulate is not the one who wins her, he's the one who doesn't need to, while she posts stories to provoke you.
Wow.
You're building muscle, physical, mental, spiritual, while she seeks validation through attention. You're sharpening purpose in the silence of your solitude. Let your silence become surgical. Let your indifference carry the weight of a man who remembers who he is. No longer does your ego negotiate between the cravings of your ID and the emotional games of her superego. Now it stands grounded, not in her reality. It's not in society's expectations, but in yours. Because emotional sovereignty means this: you feel everything, but you obey nothing that doesn't serve your path. You no longer seek women who test your worth. You attract women who recognize it because it's carved into your presence, not your performance. And if they don't, you stay unmoved. Not because you're cold, but because your warmth is sacred, earned, not extracted, given, not begged for. The feminine isn't healed by being worshipped. She's healed by witnessing a man who will not fold, not for beauty, not for guilt, not for loneliness. And that man is born the moment you choose yourself.